In the summer of 1993, a young couple from Colorado vanished on their way to a weekend hiking trip in the Rocky Mountains. They never checked in at the ranger station. Their rental car was never found. And for over 30 years, there were no leads until a wildfire swept through the region in 2024, uncovering a long, sealed mineshaft buried deep in the forest. What was found inside would rewrite everything the investigation thought it knew and suggest the couple might never have made it to the trailhead at all. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe if you love cold case mysteries, shocking recoveries, and psychological true crime thrillers that unravel layer by layer. August 18, 2024. Location: Grand County, Colorado. The fire had burned for 6 straight days. Smoke still hung thick in the mountain air as Cal Newell navigated his utility vehicle along the charred access road. The forest reduced to blackened husks around him. He was with the Colorado Division of Reclamation, one of the last crews allowed into the fire zone. Their job was to check for unstable terrain, flare-ups, or hazards that might threaten the fire line. But what Cal noticed wasn't ash or smoke. It was something strange just past a collapsed ridgeline where the ground had partially opened from the heat. A dip in the earth, too symmetrical to be natural. A seam of rusted steel near the surface, something buried. He climbed out of the truck and stepped cautiously over scorched rocks and brittle soil. The closer he got, the more it resembled an old entrance sealed with a corrugated steel plate, partially melted around the edges. An access hatch. It looked like part of an old mining tunnel, one that wasn't on any modern maps. He crouched to brush away the ash and debris, revealing faded yellow stenciling. MCC number 12, closed, 1966. He frowned. Mines like these had been shut down decades ago. Most were mapped, sealed, and logged. But this one, it had been buried deliberately. "Hey," Cal shouted over his radio to the men 200 YD back. "Get McNair! We got a hatch!" 3 hours later, they returned with bolt cutters, pry bars, and an official from the State Mining Bureau. It took 2 men to crack the rusted seal. When the hatch finally gave way, it exhaled decades of stale air, hot and damp and wrong. They shined their lights down a narrow descending shaft. 30 FT in, the beam caught something. A plastic grocery bag preserved by the sealed environment inside a red wallet. And when Cal opened it, the name on the driver's license was unmistakable. Megan Doyle, issued June 2, 1993. He looked back into the dark passageway. This wasn't just an old mine. It was the last place Megan Doyle and her fiancé Ryan Strickland had ever been seen alive. August 19, 2024. Boulder, Colorado. The morning after the discovery, Detective Erin Vance sat alone in her office at the Boulder Police Department, staring at the faded missing persons flyer pinned to the board above her desk. Megan Doyle and Ryan Strickland. Missing since August 21, 1993. 2 passport-style photos, smiling faces, mid-20s. Megan with sun-bleached hair and a nose ring. Ryan with thick, dark curls and an oversized flannel that practically swallowed him. They looked like every young couple from the 90s. Idealistic, free-spirited, a little broke, but happy. The kind of people who took road trips in rental cars and hiked into national forests with paper maps and granola bars. The kind of people who were supposed to come back. Erin had inherited their file 3 years ago when she transferred from violent crimes into cold cases. At the time, she'd pegged it as another presumed hiking accident, one of many. Colorado's backcountry was filled with buried trails, unstable terrain, and hidden dangers. People slipped. People got lost. People vanished. But she hadn't closed the file. Something about it had always bothered her. Maybe it was the fact that neither Megan nor Ryan had a history of risky behavior. Megan worked in early childhood education. Ryan was an environmental science graduate student. They didn't argue. They didn't run away. and they had booked 2 nights at a remote BLM cabin near Mirror Lake, only to never show up. The couple had last been seen in Granby buying gas and groceries for their trip, a receipt from the Shell station at 11:27 a.m. Then nothing. No witness accounts, no bodies, no vehicle. And now, 31 years later, a melted hatch in a burned-out zone had given her the first physical lead in decades. Her desk phone rang. She picked up on the first ring. "Detective Vance, it's Cal New from the Division of Reclamation. You asked me to call if we found anything else inside the shaft." Aaron grabbed a pen. "Go ahead." "We cleared another 30 FT of debris and broken support beams. We found personal items about halfway down. A blue canvas backpack. Contents include a rusted flashlight, a compass, and a flannel jacket. There was also a 35mm camera, severely corroded, but intact." Aaron's stomach flipped. Film inside. "Yep. Sealed inside a plastic canister. You'll want to get it developed ASAP. I'll be en route in 30 minutes. Send GPS to my phone." She hung up and stood, grabbing the file from her drawer, the one that had haunted her longest. She tucked it under her arm, locked her office door, and headed for the elevator. Something had always felt off about the Doyle Strickland disappearance, and now it wasn't just a hunch. It was physical, tangible, and buried in a mine no one remembered. The drive up to the burn zone was brutal. Smoke still lingered along Highway 40, and the air tasted like charcoal and soot. Ash drifted across the shoulders of the road like snow. The fire had come close to destroying the entire ridge, and the landscape now looked skeletal. Charred trees, like burnt matchsticks, blackened soil, scorched animal tracks frozen mid-sprint. The access road to Mine Corridor 12 was blocked off by yellow caution tape and a state patrol SUV. Aaron showed her badge and was waved through. The terrain had to be navigated on foot the last quarter mile, jagged, uneven, and still hot in places. A state-issued N95 mask covered her face. She reached the clearing by noon. A temporary canopy had been erected above the entrance. Floodlights pointed into the shaft, and several crew members stood near a folding table covered in zip-load evidence bags. Cal greeted her with a nod. "You made good time. I didn't sleep," she said flatly, surveying the scene. "This everything for now," he said. "The backpack's there. And the camera. It's old, but sealed in plastic. You might be able to recover images." Aaron slipped on gloves and lifted the camera bag. It was coated in grime, but the Canon logo was still faintly visible. She unscrewed the bottom of the canister slowly. Inside, one tightly rolled strip of 35mm film, slightly warped. A miracle it had survived. She looked to California. "I'm taking this back to Boulder. We'll get it processed through our lab." He hesitated. "There's something else," he said, gesturing toward the shaft. "We pushed a GoPro into the lower corridor on a remote pole. Just a scan, nothing fancy. You'll want to see the footage." He led her to a monitor set up in the back of a nearby truck. The screen showed jerky, grainy footage descending into darkness. Wooden beams, moist walls. The camera pushed deeper. At the 4-minute mark, Aaron leaned forward. The light had caught something metallic, twisted and rusted. Wheels, a front grille. The shattered, burned-out frame of a vehicle wedged at an angle inside the mineshaft. One door sheared off. A strip of fabric still clung to the passenger seat. Cal's voice was low. "It's a match for the couple's rental, a 1993 white Ford Tempo." Aaron's heart pounded. After 31 years, they'd found the car, half buried in a collapsed shaft, hidden behind a hatch someone had welded shut. This wasn't a hiking accident. This wasn't a misstep on a trail. This was a burial, and someone had tried to keep it that way. The undeveloped film, August 19th, 2024. Boulder Police Department. The film was still damp when it was handed off to the department's photographic preservation technician, a soft-spoken woman named Lena Barrow, who had been with the BPD archive lab for over 2 decades. She looked at the canister as if it were a delicate fossil. "You want to rush on this?" she asked. "I want everything you can give me before midnight," Aaron said. "Anything that survives. Clear, blurry, I don't care. I need to see it." Lena nodded. "We'll work dry. No fluid baths. Least invasive method possible. But if it's degraded too far, I'll take what I can get." Aaron left the lab and crossed the hallway to the cold case archive. The Doyle Strickland file sat open across her desk, now with maps spread beside it. She traced their route again. August 21st, 1993, 11:27 a.m. Granby gas station confirmed planned. Cabin check-in near Mirror Lake by 2 p.m. Never arrived. No sightings along Highway 34. And now their car had been found, wedged inside a mine that had been shut down in 1966. Aaron had checked already. MCC number 12 wasn't near their route. It was miles off in the opposite direction. The detour made no sense unless someone else had taken the wheel. She reached for the 1993 Ranger log books. There was no record of any hikers spotted in the area that weekend, matching Megan or Ryan's description. No distress calls, no radio traffic, just silence. Something about this case felt manufactured, as if someone had tried to erase the weekend entirely. A knock broke the stillness. Lena stood in the doorway, eyes wide. "You'll want to see this now," she said. Aaron followed her down the hall into the red-lit photo room where the prints were developing. Lena pointed toward the drying rack where 6 photos had been stabilized, each a 4:4:6 strip of faded color with degraded edges. But the images were clear enough. The first showed Megan and Ryan standing in front of the white rental car, smiling, alive, a forest trail behind them. The second was a selfie. Megan in the foreground, Ryan blurred behind her, her expression carefree, her eyes squinting into sunlight. The third was darker, a snapshot of a trail sign. But the sign was old, rusted, and tagged with spray paint. Danger. Shafts unmarked. Entry illegal. The fourth made Aaron stop breathing. It was Ryan sitting on a rock beside the car, but he wasn't smiling. He was looking off camera, his brow furrowed. There was someone standing just out of frame, a shadow distorted in the camera flash. Long arms, a blurry outline, maybe holding something. The fifth was taken in near darkness. Megan's face was half illuminated, her expression terrified, her mouth open as if speaking. A hand, not hers, was pressed against the window behind her. The sixth and final image was completely black, until Lena adjusted the exposure on her monitor. A faint pattern emerged, just visible if you squinted. It was metal grating, bolted steel, like a gate or a barrier. Aaron exhaled slowly. "This isn't a hiking accident," she said quietly. "No," Lena agreed. "This is someone who never intended to let them leave." Later that evening, Aaron stood in the conference room with the entire cold case unit. The 6 photos were projected on the whiteboard, and everyone was silent. 3 decades, she said. That's how long this case has sat dormant. We now have the vehicle, the location, and photographic evidence that strongly suggests coercion or abduction. She clicked the slide to the 4th photo, the shadowy figure behind Ryan. "We've run enhancement filters. This is not a forest ranger. The build, the posture, it's wrong. And no known personnel were active in that area in '93. Someone lured them off course. We just don't know how." Lieutenant Morgan folded his arms. "We'll reopen the file officially, treat it as a homicide until proven otherwise." Aaron nodded. "I want to work the case full-time. Interviews, ground search, full forensic workup of the mineshaft." "You'll get what you need," Morgan said. "We'll assign a field team to secure the site in the morning. But if this turns into something more than an old cold case, if there's a third party involved, we'll find them," Aaron said, "even if it's been 30 years. That night, back at her apartment, Aaron sat in bed with her laptop open and the digital scans of the photographs zoomed into full size. She studied Megan's face in that second-to-last shot. The terror in her eyes, the hand in the glass, not just a ghost of the past, a witness, a victim, and possibly the last living trace of what really happened inside Mine Corridor 12, August 2024. Granby, Colorado. The gas station hadn't changed much in 30 years. Erin stood beside pump number 2 of the old Shell station off Highway 34, flipping through a folder of black and white photocopies. She had the 1993 receipt from Megan and Ryan's stop. $1,422 for unleaded time stamped at 11:27 a.m., August 21st, paid in cash. She looked around. The dusty pump handles, the same warped pavement, the store still cramped with candy bars and fishing gear. Time had frayed the edges, but not erased them. Inside, the new clerk had no knowledge of the case, but the owner, Arnold Keller, had been here in '93. He was now in his 70s, with a stiff leg from an old motorcycle accident and a pair of thick-rimmed glasses that kept sliding down his nose. Erin sat across from him in the back office, the door propped open by a crate of windshield wiper fluid. "I remember that summer," he said slowly, tapping his fingers on the desk. "Hot. Real dry. Fires up north. Everyone was talking about restrictions. Do you remember this couple?" Erin slid the photos across the desk, the first one of Megan and Ryan in front of their car. He squinted. "Her. Maybe. I've got a better memory for faces than names. He looks familiar, too. But that was a long time ago. What about this one?" She slid over the enhanced image of the shadow behind Ryan, a lanky figure mostly out of frame. Arnold frowned. That looks like a forestry cap. A ranger? Could be, but it's not an official uniform. Back then, a lot of locals bought surplus gear. Hats, jackets. We sold them here for years. Erin leaned forward. "Did anyone around here wear that kind of stuff regularly? Anyone who might have been seen around the area that weekend?" Arnold hesitated. His fingers stopped tapping. "There was a guy lived in a trailer past Little Elk Creek. Bit of a loner. Went by the name Boone." "Boone? What? Just Boone? I never heard a last name. He came in maybe once a week for jerky, beer, sometimes film." "Film?" "Yeah. Old school camera type. Never saw him talk to many folks. Wore a forestry cap, worn out to hell. Had a weird walk like he limped but refused to use a cane. You know if he's still around." Arnold rubbed his chin. "Doubted. That trailer burned in the late '90s. County said it was electrical, but I think he moved after that. A few of the locals claimed he had bunkers dug out near the old mines. Crazy survivalist talk." Erin's pulse ticked up. "Mines like MCC number 12. Arnold looked at her sharply. "Yeah, that one was near where he used to hunt." Erin stood. "Do you have any records? Credit slips, receipts, anything with a signature or a real name?" "Not anymore." But he leaned back and reached into a drawer, pulling out a yellowed ledger. "I kept a notebook back then. Dumb habit. Names, purchases in case someone skipped town or owed me cash." He flipped through there. August 17th, 1993. Boone, jerky, film, beer, gloves. Erin snapped a photo of the page with her phone. "Do you remember what kind of car he drove?" "Never saw it. He always parked out back." She turned toward the door. "Thanks, Mr. Keller. If you remember anything else, call the number on my card." He nodded, but his expression had grown tense. "You think he's the one who hurt them?" Erin paused. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." Back in her rental SUV, Erin called the state archives. The mine records for MCC number 12 had been scanned and digitized after a preservation project in 2006. She searched for any mention of private landowners or disputes on the surrounding forest plots. One flagged entry, Boone T. Lead. Better submitted trespass complaint against federal personnel, 1991. Location vicinity of MCC number 12 access corridor. She froze. Ledbetter. She finally had a last name. She ran it through the Colorado DMV and got a hit. Boone Timothy Ledbetter, born 1956. Expired driver's license, no forwarding address. Former owner of a trailer lot off Elk Creek Road. The fire report was thin. No injuries, no insurance claim, disposition abandoned. But more importantly, he was flagged in a 1998 suspicious activity report filed by an off-duty forest ranger. Boone Ledbetter observed trespassing near decommissioned shaft. Appeared to be sealing entrance with corrugated metal, no permit. Claimed to be preserving history. Same shaft, now known as MCC number 12. Aaron's blood chilled. He hadn't just stumbled onto it. He had access to it, and maybe ownership. She called Detective Morales from her department. Find out if Boone Ledbetter is still alive, she said. If he has property, hunting licenses, anything. And check for arrests, especially anything involving trespassing, kidnapping, or restraining orders. You think he's our guy? Morales asked. I think he knew exactly what was in that mine, Aaron said. And I think he put it there. August 21st, 20 to 24, Northern Ridge, Grant County. The search perimeter around MCC number 12 had expanded overnight. Forest rangers, crime scene techs, and cadaver dogs now combed the scorched mountain slope, like archaeologists excavating a battlefield. Charred tree trunks jutted from the ground like burnt matchsticks. The air rire of soot, pine tar, and something older, something disturbed. Detective Aaron Vance pulled up in a status-suit utility vehicle, the tires crunching over blackened gravel. She parked just beyond the mine's sealed access point, where crews had set up orange tents and portable floodlights to stabilize the site. She was met by Officer Matty Cook, a wilderness-trained investigator from the State Forensic Response Unit. Young, sharp, with a long scar down the side of her neck, one she never explained. We expanded the sweep 20 yards in each direction, Matty reported. No fresh evidence, but we found a marked tree line just northeast of the shaft. Marked how? Nched bark, deliberate, repeating pattern every 30F to a triangle cuts with a center slash. Aaron frowned. Trail signs. Old school ones. Not used by rangers. More like private code. Matty led her across the charred hillside to the northeast quadrant. The trees here were partially spared, singed, but not destroyed. About 10 yards in, they found the first mark, a triangular notch with a vertical cut bisecting it. A few feet below, a rusted nail stuck out of the bark. The same mark repeated on 5 trees. The 6th, deeper into the woods, bore a different symbol, an axe carved into the trunk. And just below that, barely visible beneath scorched underbrush, a pile of flat stones arranged in a deliberate rectangle. Aaron crouched. This wasn't natural. She brushed away the top layer. Beneath the stones was a sheet of plywood, half burnt, warped from heat. Help me move it. Matty nodded, and together they lifted the board. What they revealed wasn't a grave. It was a trap door. The hinges had rusted nearly shut, but the door pulled back with a groan. Beneath it, dirt stairs descending into what looked like a dugout. Not stone like the mine, but reinforced timber, sagging, but intact. No one mentioned a secondary structure, Aaron muttered. It's not on any of the old maps, Matty said, peering down. You want to go in? Aaron nodded. She pulled her flashlight from her belt and started down the steps. The air was dry and stale. 20 FT down, they reached the bottom, a small earthen room, no wider than a storage shed. Inside were crates, blankets, a rusted kerosene heater, an old Coleman water jug. It looked like a survival cache, but one that had been lived in. At the far end, a warped wooden desk leaned against the dirt wall. Aaron opened the center drawer. Inside, wrapped in an old military scarf, were 4 items. A pocket knife rusted, a Polaroid photo face down, a dog-eared notebook, and a necklace small with a bird pendant crusted in dirt. She turned the photo over. Megan Doyle sitting on a log, her wrists in her lap, a shadow of someone standing behind her. Erin blinked hard. She recognized the pendant from one of the photos Megan had taken herself on that last roll of film. She had been wearing it. Erin reached for the notebook. It was mostly blank, but about 30 pages in, a crude, jagged handwriting appeared. August 23rd. She stopped crying today. He says that means we're making progress. August 25th. The boy keeps coughing. He's weak. He says he wants to go home. I told him he doesn't have one anymore. August 28th. I hate the sound they make when they sleep. There were more entries, fragmented, unpunctuated, written like confessions or reminders. Most didn't name anyone, but one stood out, circled in red pen. The woman with the bird necklace. She didn't scream when the door shut. She just stared at me. I think she knew. Erin stood slowly, heart pounding. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was a holding room, a bunker, a psychological prison. Maddie looked around, her voice low. This man had a system. Erin nodded, slipping the notebook into an evidence bag, and a pattern. Later that evening, back at the incident command tent, a call came in from Morales in Boulder. "We have movement on Lid Better," he said. "Colorado DMV flagged an active fishing license issued 2 years ago. Different name, Tim Boone, but the due matches. Address listed as a post office box in Fremont County. That's 6 hours from here." "Yep." But get this, he listed a secondary contact address on the form, a property just outside of Canyon City. Aaron sat forward. "You run the property?" "2 parcels. One's an old cattle shed. The other's registered under a defunct hunting club. But guess what's 30 yards from the property line?" "What?" "A decommissioned vertical mine." Aaron didn't speak for a moment. "Send me everything. We may not be dealing with a ghost. We may be dealing with a man who's still alive." August 22nd, 2024, Fremont County, Colorado. The road to the old hunting parcel was barely drivable, just 2 ruts in sun-shed clay winding through dry hills and low scrub. Erin Vance followed the GPS down the trail, dust rising behind her SUV in curling plumes. Beside her, in the passenger seat, Officer Maddie Cook scanned a printed map with terrain overlays. This property hasn't had a formal owner since 1999. Maddie said the club dissolved after one of the founding members died. Since then, no taxes, no permits, nothing but silence. "Except a fishing license tied to the old mailbox," Erin said. Maddie nodded. "And that secondary structure, the one backing up against the ridge, we think it was built over a vertical shaft." They crested a rise, and the shack came into view. It looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Tin roof caved in, wooden walls weathered to gray, paint peeling off in sheets. But something about the front steps looked wrong, too clean. As they stepped out of the SUV, the heat hit like a furnace. The air shimmered. The land was empty for miles, just the sound of wind through brittle brush and the creak of rusted metal. Erin approached the door slowly, flashlight in one hand, her other resting near her holster. The door creaked open. Inside, the air was stale. Cobwebs hung from the corners. A single beam of light cut through a hole in the ceiling, illuminating floating dust and the faint outline of a desk against the far wall. Maddie stepped inside and immediately froze. "Smell that?" she whispered. Erin nodded. It was faint, but unmistakable. Bleach. Recent. Someone had been here. They moved quickly, clearing the main room. No movement, no back exit. Erin crossed to the desk and opened the top drawer. Inside, yellowing paperwork, mouse-chewed edges, and a battered leather-bound ledger with the words "Rock Valley Game" and "Gun" embossed in faded gold. She opened it. Most of the entries were mundane: rifle logs, deer tags, membership dues. But deeper into the book, the handwriting changed. The neat print turned jagged, angry, disjointed. One page was dated September 1993. Due and Stagg delivered August 21st. Waited 3 days. Stagg resisted. Put him in the pit. Another entry. December 1993. Too cold. Bird won't eat. Sings in the dark. And another. May 1994. Quiet now. They always go quiet eventually. Maddie leaned over Aaron's shoulder. What the hell is this? Aaron turned the page. A rough, hand-drawn map took up the next spread. It showed the shack, the forest, and behind it, an X over a structure labeled Vert Shaft, sealed. There, Aaron said. That's where we go next. They exited through the rear of the shack and followed the hand-drawn trail on foot. After 20 minutes, they found it. A pile of rocks and rusted scrap partially obscuring a cement collar in the earth. Chained shut, padlocked. The shaft was old, lined with moss and moisture, but a recent tire track looped nearby, faint but clear. Aaron bent down. Someone's been guarding this. She snapped photos and radioed it in. Vance to base. We've located a sealed vertical shaft on the Rock Valley property, requesting ground-penetrating radar and forensic excavation crew. Copy that, came the reply. Crew ETA 4 hours. Aaron stood and wiped sweat from her brow. There's something down there, she said. Maddie was crouched near the edge, brushing debris away from the lock. She pulled something out of the grass. A tooth, small human, yellowed with age, the root still attached. She held it up, her voice dry. I think it's time we stopped calling this a missing persons case. Later that evening, Aaron sat in the makeshift field tent as the forensic dig team rigged a tripod over the shaft. The radar had already confirmed the worst objects inside. Multiple depths, one possible vehicle signature, one cluster of bone density. Aaron stared at the open ledger on her lap, its blood-stained corners now sealed in a plastic sleeve. Each coded entry was a clue. Doe, Stagg, Bird. Likely pseudonyms or internal references. A way to dehumanize. A way to catalog victims without names. She looked over at the evidence board, where Megan Doyle and Ryan Strickland's photos now sat beside Boone Leadbetter's old ID. He hadn't just killed. He had recorded, tracked, measured, described, and maybe kept others. A forensic tech appeared at the flap of the tent. Ma'am, she said quietly. We just pulled a box from the shaft. Inside were personal items, Polaroids, and what appears to be clothing fragments. Female. Aaron stood. Any sign of bodies? Not yet, but we found another locked chamber dug into the side of the shaft wall. Jesus, the tech hesitated. There's more. One of the Polaroids. We think it's from the late 90s. The woman in it. She handed Aaron the photo. It wasn't Megan. It was someone else. Someone new. And she was wearing a bird necklace identical to Megan Doyle's. Aaron's throat went dry. This wasn't a one-time thing. She said this was a pattern, and she had a feeling they were only beginning to understand the scale. August 23rd, 2024. Boulder Police Department Evidence Lab. The Polaroid was curled from age and heat, its corners brittle, the edges smudged with something that looked like ash, but the image itself was clear. Too clear. A young woman, early 20s, sat on a cot made of wood and fabric. A bare light bulb hung overhead. Her arms were crossed over her stomach, and her eyes were locked onto the lens. Not pleading, not afraid, but hollow, like she'd already come to terms with something no one should ever have to. She wore a canvas jacket and faded jeans. Around her neck hung a thin leather cord with a bird-shaped pendant. It was not Megan Doyle, and yet the resemblance was eerie. Not physical, but contextual, like she'd been dressed, posed, and kept the same way. Aaron stared at the photo under the lab lights. Estimated date? she asked. Forensic imaging says around 1998, said Lena, the technician. It was stored in a sealed tin. No water damage, no mildew. The exposure is good. Developed using Polaroid Type 600 film, discontinued in the early 2000s. Can we enhance the background? Lena adjusted the sliders. The shadows sharpened. There were vertical wood planks behind the woman, some splintered, some notched. On the back wall, carved faintly into the grain, were 2 initials. R.S. Aaron's stomach twisted. Ryan Strickland, she said quietly. Or someone using his name. Down the hall in the incident room, she pinned the new Polaroid beneath the earlier ones. Megan, Ryan, the shadows, the pit, and now this girl. A timeline was beginning to form, and it was worse than she feared. 1993, Megan Doyle and Ryan Strickland vanish. 1993 to 1994, Boone Leadbetter disappears off-grid. 1998, Polaroid dated and stored with preserved items, suggesting continued abduction or captivity pattern. This wasn't a one-off. This was cyclical, methodical, predatory. Aaron rubbed her temple, staring at the wall of photographs and evidence tags, trying to find the thread that tied it all together. Was it only the mine? Only this one man? Or had someone helped him? By midday, Morales called in. We got a partial match on the girl in the Polaroid, he said. Facial recognition ran it against old missing persons databases. We have a probable ID. Who? Hannah Claire. Vanished May 5th, 1998. Age 22. Last seen hitchhiking west of Colorado Springs. No vehicle, no witnesses. Just gone. You sure? 92% facial match plus a note in her file. Her sister said she wore a necklace, a carved wooden bird she got from their grandfather. Aaron felt a chill crawl up her spine. And that was never made public. Nope. Buried in the narrative, not mentioned in press releases. So, how does that end up on 2 women 5 years apart? I don't think it's coincidence. Neither do I. Back at the shaft, the excavation crew had broken into the sealed chamber wedged into the pit wall. The tunnel inside was barely wide enough for a grown man to crawl through. 40 FT in, they found a low room carved into the rock. Inside, 3 metal-framed cots, 2 rusted folding chairs, and a table with dozens of Polaroids spread like a fan across its surface, each labeled by date and nickname. Bird, 1993 to 1994. Maple, 1996. June, 1998. The images were all posed, all staged. Some showed bruises. Some showed women curled into themselves. Some were almost calm, blank. But not a single one showed Megan Doyle after 1994. Aaron stood in the doorway of the chamber, the stale air pressing down on her. This was a ritual, she whispered. He was documenting them like trophies, naming them, controlling the narrative. The forensic tech stepped beside her. We found something else. She handed Aaron a journal, small, leather-bound with crude sketches and fragmented entries. Inside, Aaron found a disturbing line. I tried to keep Bird. I really did. But she was too clever, too quiet. I never found where she hid the tape. Tape? Aaron's breath caught. There's a recording, she said. Megan left something behind. Back in Boulder, they scanned the journal for further clues. On the final page was a sketch, crude, almost childlike, of the shaft. A line pointed to a notch in the wall near the second cod. A handwritten note beneath it read, "The bird sang before she flew." Aaron stared at it for a long time. It wasn't poetry. It was a message, a location, a warning, and maybe, just maybe, a final piece of her voice preserved in stone. August 24th, 2024. MCC number 12, Subchamber, Grand County. The shaft walls groaned as Erin Vance lowered herself into the deepest pocket of the mine. This time, alone with a headlamp, gloves, and the copy of Boone Lebetter's journal tucked into her field vest. The forensic crew had already cleared and reinforced the tunnel leading to the chamber Megan may have been held in. Aaron reached the second cut. It was rusted at the joints, the mattress half decayed with torn cloth exposing a wire frame underneath. But what mattered was the wall directly beside it. The sketch in Boone's journal had shown a mark, something chipped into the stone. Erin ran her gloved fingers across the cold surface until she felt it. A divot, not natural, not mining wear. And just beneath it, wedged into a narrow groove behind a fractured layer of stone, was a small rectangular object, wrapped in cloth. Erin's breath caught as she gently pried it loose. A micro cassette, still intact, still labeled. M82893. She didn't wait. She climbed out of the shaft like her life depended on it, hard-hammering, cradling the cassette like a sacred relic. Back at the mobile command tent, the team worked in silence as the tape was prepared for playback. An old micro-cassette recorder had been sourced from the Denver Evidence Archive. Erin paced while they checked the spools. Then Lena gave a nod. It's playable. She pressed play. A low hiss filled the tent, followed by silence. Then, "My name is Megan Doyle." Erin froze. If someone is hearing this, I don't know how much time I have. Clicking sounds in background. He calls me Bird. I don't know why. I haven't seen Ryan in 4 days. I think he's silence. He keeps saying he's making us better. That we were chosen because we stopped. Choked breath. If this tape survives me, please find my mother. Her name is Lillian Doyle. She lives in Boulder. Tell her. I didn't forget her. Not even once. The recording cut to static. Everyone in the tent stood in stunned silence. Maddie leaned forward. She knew she might die, and she left this anyway. Erin stared at the small device in Lena's hand. She was documenting her own captivity. She wanted us to hear this. She wanted justice, Morales added quietly, even if it came 30 years too late. By dusk, the tape had been transferred to digital and submitted to the DOJ for voice authentication. Early analysis confirmed it was 100% Megan Doyle. The evidence was now irrefutable. The shaft was used to confine multiple victims. Boone laid better, had a clear psychological method, including captivity, renaming, and timed isolation. Megan Doyle had recorded a final statement, confirming both Ryan's likely death and her own deteriorating condition. At least one more victim, Hannah Claire, had followed 5 years later, indicating the crimes continued into the late 90s. And now, with the discovery of the Bird tape, Erin had something else, a murder confession, even if it came through implication. That night, Erin sat alone in her Boulder apartment, the sound of Megan's voice still looping in her ears. She opened the last page of the recovered journal again. Something had caught her eye earlier, but she hadn't made the connection until now. The phrase, "The bird sang before she flew." Erin now believed Megan escaped, if only briefly, long enough to hide that cassette behind the wall. But the use of flew was telling. Had Megan died, or had Boone let her go thinking she wouldn't survive? And what about Hannah Claire? Her body hadn't been recovered. Only the photo. What if she too had vanished from Boone's grasp? Not through death, but by disappearing the same way Megan had tried to. A new possibility formed in Erin's mind, one she hadn't dared consider until now. Not all the victims died. Some might still be out there, still hiding, still running. August 25th, 2024, Fremont County, Colorado. The file was thin, too thin. A single sheet, yellowed and dog-eared, tucked in the back corner of the Colorado Missing Persons Archive. It had been mislabeled, filed under Claire, Hannah with 1 H, likely the reason no one had flagged it earlier. But now with Megan's tape and the photo from the shaft chamber, everything was falling into terrifying focus. Erin stared at the line scrolled in blue ink near the bottom of the report. Case closed. Subject called in from anonymous payphone, stated she was safe. No follow-up. Erin's heart stuttered. The date of the call? September 18th, 1998. 3 weeks after Hannah Claire vanished, and 2 weeks after the photo had been taken, she picked up the phone and dialed Morales. Pulled the payphone logs for Fremont and Teller counties, September 1998. I want locations for every traceable call made by a woman who wouldn't give her name. Looking for a ghost? He asked. No, Aaron said. I think she's real, and I think she's been hiding ever since. 3 hours later, Morales called back. Got a hit. Payphone outside a bait shop in Canyon City. Operator note says caller was crying, refused to give a name, said she was out and then hung up. Video. Not a chance. That was 98. But there's more. Same phone. Had another call 2 days earlier. Placed to a wildlife rescue shelter. Female voice. Message was left, but not saved. Name of the shelter? High Valley Wildlife Refuge. Aaron was already writing it down. I'll go in person. High Valley was barely a speck on the map. One long gravel road, a half-dozen rusted trailers, and a barn full of rehabilitated hawks and owls. A retired vet named Mildred Cates ran the place. Mid-70s denim shirt, sharp eyes behind BIF focals. I remember that girl, she said, sitting across from Aaron in the barn's tiny office. Didn't give her name. Showed up with a busted wrist and scratches all over her arms. Asked for water. Said she'd been camping. What did she look like? Brown hair. Short. Tense as a rabbit. She wouldn't let me call anyone. Just kept asking about injured birds, specifically one that had a broken wing. Aaron felt her skin go cold. A bird? She said she had a pet as a kid. A sparrow, I think. Used to say it was the only thing in the world that ever listened to her. I gave her a cot in the barn. She stayed 2 nights, then she was gone. Did she leave anything? Mildred nodded and stood. She left this in the cot. Didn't come back for it. She returned with a small cloth pouch. Inside a wooden bird pendant on a leather cord identical to Megan's and the one in the Henlair Polaroid. Aaron held it in her hands, breath trembling. Did she say where she was going? Number. But when she left, she said something I never forgot. What? She said, if anyone ever comes asking about me, tell them I got out, but I'm not free. Aaron closed her eyes. She was alive. Hannah Claire survived. Back at the Boulder PD that night, Aaron added a new column to the case board. She drew a line beneath Megan Doyle, Ryan Strickland, and Hannah Claire. She wrote in sharp black ink, known survivor. If Hannah had lived, even for a while after escape, then others might have too. Boone's journal mentioned at least 3 code names not yet connected to real people. Maple, June, Bird, and possibly more. Aaron stared at the pattern. Every victim given a name, a symbol, a cycle. The cassette proved Megan had resisted. The journal proved Boone knew she hid something. But now something darker was becoming clear. Maybe Boone wasn't just kidnapping them. Maybe he believed he was creating something, breaking people, rebuilding them. And the ones who didn't survive, they were buried. But the ones who did, they carried what he did to them forever. Aaron turned the lights off in the evidence room and stood before the wall of faces, maps, photos, and journal fragments. She didn't just have a killer to track. She had a trail of survivors to find. And maybe, just maybe, one of them had seen what really happened to Megan Doyle. August 26, 2024, Grand County, Colorado. Aaron parked on the same overlook where the final photo of Megan and Ryan had been taken. Ryan grinning in front of the red Cadillac, arms slung around Megan's shoulders, forest stretching behind them like a painting. The lake shimmered beyond the pines, calm, silvered in the morning light. It had been 31 years, the last known location before they disappeared. She stepped out of the vehicle slowly. The air was thinner here. Pine needles crunched underfoot across the road. The trailhead to Mirror Lake wound down between the trees, partially overgrown, but still marked by a faded Forest Service post. Erin pulled the photo from her file. Ryan had been standing about 20 ft from the edge. Behind him, just barely visible in the original frame, was the top edge of a man-made ridge, a flat shelf that looked too straight to be natural. She followed the trail down. 20 minutes in, the forest grew darker, thicker. The wind quieted. Birds chirped high above, but otherwise the place was unnervingly still. Then she saw it. A clearing, charred stumps, broken glass, a ring of scorched earth where the Cadillac had once been torched and left to rot. This was where they'd been found. Erin crouched beside the crater of scorched brush where the vehicle's remains had been exhumed. A soft indentation remained, overgrown, but visible. A long, shallow depression that had likely held the car for decades. Beneath it, a layer of loose gravel. She brushed the dirt back with her gloves, revealing a rusted bolt, then a jagged strip of red paint. She stood slowly, heart pounding. "This is where it started," she whispered. "Or maybe this is where it ended." The forensic team had already combed the area when the Cadillac was pulled from the dirt 2 weeks prior, but they hadn't searched beyond the clearing. Erin decided to push deeper, past the site, downhill toward where water runoff might have carried debris or evidence. What she found about 50 yards in stopped her cold. A fire ring, old, scorched, and beside it, a half-buried metal tin wedged beneath the root of a pine tree. Erin dropped to her knees. Inside the tin was a folded piece of paper, sealed inside a cracked Ziploc bag, faded by moisture, but legible. She unfolded it. It was a letter, handwritten in blocky, deliberate strokes. "To whoever finds this, my name is Megan Doyle. If this is still here, then he never came back. Or maybe I didn't. I don't know. I lost track of time. I left the tape in the wall because I knew no one would believe me without hearing it. He kept calling it the pattern. Said he'd done this before. Said I was next. But I kept quiet. I remembered my mother's voice. I remembered home. If you find this, please find my mother. Her name is Lillian Doyle. Tell her I fought. Tell her I tried. And tell her I remember the sound of her singing by the kitchen window. That's what kept me alive." Me and Erin sat still for a long time. The forest had gone silent. This wasn't just evidence. It was a goodbye. And it changed everything. The tape Megan left behind had been one part of the story. Proof of Boone Ledbetter's crimes. But this letter proved something even more disturbing. Megan had escaped the mine, at least for a time. She'd made it here to the surface, to the car, to the road. And still, she was never found. Not until now. Later that evening, back at Boulder PD, Erin sat with Lillian Doyle, the woman who had spent 31 years waiting for her daughter's voice. She played the tape again, slower this time, each word hitting like a hammer. When it ended, Lillian's hands trembled. She didn't cry. She just stared at the table, then reached into her purse and pulled out an old, creased photo. "People told me to move on," she said softly. "But I always knew a mother knows." She pushed the photo across the table. It was of Megan, age 7, standing by a kitchen window, singing, sunlight catching her hair. "That's the moment she was talking about," Lillian whispered, "the one that kept her alive." Erin's voice cracked. She remembered. Lillian nodded. She came back to me, even if it was only in her words. Erin stood. "We're going to find out everything he did, everyone he hurt, and anyone who might have helped him." Lillian's eyes were tired, but fierce. "Good," she said, "because I think she wasn't the only one he took." August 27th, 2024. Colorado Bureau of Investigation, Cold Case Archives. The room smelled like dust, plastic, and time. Rows of metal shelves held the state's darkest secrets, unsolved cases, abandoned leads, and the records of the forgotten. Aaron Vance stood in the aisle marked 1990 to 2000, unidentified victims, and Jane Doe's. With her gloves already on, and a crate labeled RB-147. Recovered materials, Rock Valley Hunting Club beside her. She slid a thick manila folder from the crate and opened it on the steel cart. Inside were Boone Ledbetter's final possessions, recovered from the shaft wall's hidden chamber. There were photos, maps, scattered notes, and one thing they hadn't cataloged yet, a leather-bound notebook, smaller than the ledger, with a lock that had long since rusted away. She opened it. The first page had only a single phrase written in pencil. The pattern begins with silence. What followed chilled her blood. A table, handwritten, 2 columns, 23 rows. On the left, code names. On the right, years. Bird, 1993. Stag, 1993. Maple, 1996. June, 1998. Ash, 2001. Sparrow, 2003. Doe, 2006, and so on. 23 entries. Only 3 had been linked to real people, the rest unidentified. No bodies, no reports, just Boone's private log. And then below the final entry, a note. The mine is full. The mountain will bury what the world refused to hear. Aaron closed the book slowly. This wasn't just one crime. It was a program, a method, a ritual. She had to know more. She called Morales. I need every unsolved missing persons report between 1992 and 2010. Female, ages 16 to 30, last seen within a 300-mile radius of Grand and Fremont counties. Jesus, that's going to be hundreds of cases. I'll narrow it down. Just run the search. Hours later, the results started coming in. Aaron sifted through digital files comparing names, dates, and descriptions against Boone's list. She flagged any report with eerie similarities, nature settings, vehicles abandoned near forests, victims with no known enemies, or items left behind that couldn't be explained. One file stood out. Case number 2003-408. Marissa Eldred, age 24, disappeared June 14, 2003. Last seen, leaving a campground in Gunnison National Forest. Evidence: car found roadside, driver door open, campfire still burning. Her dog found alive nearby. No signs of struggle. Marissa's case had gone cold after a few weeks. No witnesses, no leads. But her year 2003 matched a code name in the ledger. Sparrow, another match, and then another Ash, 2001. Possibly Clara O'Neill vanished hiking alone near San Isabel. Due 2006, unidentified, remains found in a root cellar near Cannon City. No ID, partial dental match to a girl from Wyoming. No confirmation. One by one, the women were surfacing, buried not just under dirt, but under decades of clerical apathy. Aaron leaned back in her chair, the weight of the discovery pressing down on her. 23 victims, only 4 known. No centralized pattern ever noticed until now. And it all came back to one man. Boone Ledbetter. Except not all of the entries had Boone's handwriting. Aaron flipped to the middle of the notebook. A new pen, a different style. Someone else had written. She sang louder than the others. Couldn't break her. Had to send her away. Risk too high. No code name listed. No date. Just one final line scrolled in angry ink. He says the pattern belongs to him, but he doesn't understand. It was never his. Aaron stared at the page. This wasn't just Boone. There was someone else. That night, Aaron met Morales at the bar across from the bureau. She showed him the note. He wasn't working alone, she said. Not the whole time. Morales exhaled slowly. Jesus. We assumed Boone was the architect. But what if he was just the enforcer? You think there's someone else still out there? I think Megan knew. I think that's why she hid the tape. She wanted to make sure the real story survived, even if she didn't. Morales stared at the notebook. What do you want to do? Aaron answered without hesitation. I want to find the one who finished the ledger. August 28, 2024. Boulder PD Cold Case Unit. Aaron spread the 2 pages side by side beneath the evidence lamp. The original ledger with Boone Lid Better's entries, and the smaller, more cryptic journal that had revealed the code names and dates. Side by side, the handwriting differences were undeniable. The first half of the second journal was Boone, messy, blocky, consistent with known samples. But the last 4 entries, they weren't Boone's. They were smoother, cleaner, controlled, deliberate. Somebody else had continued his work, and whoever it was, they hadn't stopped in 2006. At the very bottom of the second journal, just beneath the final line about the pattern not being his, there was a single name, Emery. No last name, just that. But it was underlined twice. Not a victim, not a pseudonym, a signature. Aaron's mind jumped back to something buried in the original 1993 incident report. Something Megan's mother had once mentioned in a police interview, a name Ryan had brought up a few weeks before they vanished. She flipped through the transcript until she found it. Ryan said they were going up to Mirror Lake because a friend had told them about it. Someone who'd gone up there the summer before. I don't remember the name. Something odd. Emery. Something like that. Aaron stared at the line. It wasn't random. Whoever Emery was, he'd been part of it from the beginning, possibly before Boone even acted. Later that afternoon, she drove to the small, overgrown parcel on file under the old Rock Valley Game and Gun Club deed. Most of the land had reverted to state control after the club disbanded, but a thin triangular wedge, barely half an acre, had been sold off in 1994 to a private buyer. The name on the deed, Emery Talcott. Aaron's chest tightened. She dug deeper. Talcott had no criminal record, no family connections to Boone. But one detail stood out. In 1992, a full year before Megan and Ryan vanished, Emery Talcott was cited for illegal hunting in Grant County. The case had been dismissed, but he'd been caught with a map marked RV Delta and a radio scanner used to listen to emergency channels. RV Rock Valley. He knew the terrain. He had access. He had means. Aaron and Morales stood outside the old Talcott residence, an A-frame cabin hidden in the woods west of Cotopaxi. The structure was crumbling, swallowed by vines and trees, but still standing. The mailbox bore a single rusted letter, E. Inside, they found mold, rot, and scattered wildlife magazines. But what mattered was the basement. A room barely visible beneath a trapped door in the kitchen floor, sealed shut with a padlock that had long since rusted through. Morales pried it open. They descended in silence. The smell was musty, metallic. What they found underground chilled them both. Another room. Stone walls. A cut. A table with restraints bolted to it. And on the wall behind a layer of dust, a series of Polaroids thumbtacked to the concrete. All women, all staged. Same style, same poses. But the signature at the bottom of each photo, E.T. initials matching the journal. Aaron scanned the room, flashlight slicing through cobwebs. A crate sat in the corner, sealed with metal wire. Inside it, she found something she hadn't expected. Clippings, newspaper articles, printouts from missing persons databases, blog posts from online cold case forums, all with notes scribbled in the margins. Too public, wrong age, not ready, quiet type, possible. Bird remembered. She ruined the cycle. Aaron stepped back, her hands trembling. Morales. He's not just documenting them. Morales read the clippings over her shoulder. He's studying them. He's still active, Aaron said. Jesus. No, listen. This last note. She pointed to the margin beside an article dated May 2024, featuring a photo of a missing girl from Durango. This is 3 months ago. He hasn't stopped. Morales turned pale. You think he's grooming new victims? I think he's continuing the pattern. The mine might have collapsed. Boone might be dead, but Emery Talcott is still alive. Morales took a shaky breath. What do we do? Aaron looked up at the Polaroids at the crude table at the cycle that had never really ended. We find him. August 29th, 2024, Fremont County, Colorado. It was nearly dark when the unmarked SUV rolled to a stop at the end of a long, rooted driveway, carved through dense pine. The coordinates came from the margin of a 2024 clipping, handwritten in faint blue ink on the back of a Polaroid. If she sings, she's ready. Check. Late August. Aaron stared out the windshield at the distant silhouette of a hunting cabin, its windows shuttered, a faint orange light glowing behind slats. No electricity lines, no satellite dish, no cell reception. They were on their own. Morales readied the entry team. 2 SWAT officers flanked the sides, while Aaron approached the porch with quiet, practiced steps. Inside, a voice was singing. Not loud, not cheerful, hushed, almost childlike. Aaron pressed her back to the wall and listened. Mama's in the kitchen cutting up the pie. She swallowed hard. The same song Megan Doyle had referenced in her tape. The lullaby her mother used to sing at the window. Whoever was inside, they knew that they had heard the tape. Or worse, they were there when Megan sang it herself. Morales gave the signal. The door came open fast, hinges splitting, flashlights cut through the cabin. Inside, a girl, late teens, pale, sitting cross-legged on the floor. She didn't flinch at the entry. She just looked up at them, blinking slowly. She wore a canvas jacket. Her wrists were red. On the wall behind her, a wooden bird hung from a nail. "Where is he?" Aaron asked. The girl stared, then pointed to the trap door. The basement was colder than outside. Dust, silence, and then footsteps. They turned fast, weapons drawn. But it wasn't a man who emerged from the shadows. It was a figure in flannel and canvas, thin, gray-haired, eyes glassy. Emery Talcott. He didn't run, didn't speak. He just raised his hand slowly, palms out. "I knew you'd come," he whispered. Aaron stepped forward. "You've watched them? All of them. Megan, Hannah. You took what Boone started and turned it into some kind of system." He didn't deny it. "She was the one that ruined it," Emery said, voice cracking. She sang. "You mean Megan?" He nodded. "She wouldn't break. He tried. I tried. But she never screamed. Just sang over and over. It got in my head. It stayed there. You killed her." "No," Emery whispered. "She walked. She made it to the ridge. I was the one who pulled her back. I'm the one who made sure she never left again." Aaron's jaw clenched. "You buried her. I buried the pattern." "No," she said, stepping forward, voice low and shaking. "You buried the proof. But she still got out. She left us everything. Her voice, her story, her goodbye." His hands trembled. None of them fought like she did. Aaron looked him in the eye. "And that's why we're here." The arrest was swift. No resistance. Emery went limp the moment cuffs were locked on. The girl upstairs, Genos, age 17, had been reported missing just 6 weeks earlier from New Mexico. She was malnourished, bruised, and shockingly composed. "He kept calling me June," she told the paramedics. "But that wasn't my name." August 30th, 2024. Boulder PD headquarters. Aaron stood before the wall of code names one last time. The Polaroids, the journal, Megan's tape, Hannah's pendant, Jenna's safe return. They had enough for federal indictments. DNA recovered from the mineshaft, matched to 3 other Jane Does. Names would follow, graves would be found, families would get closure. But Megan Doyle, she was never recovered. Only her voice, her words, her resistance, and that mattered. It meant the pattern didn't win. It meant the silence had finally broken. September 4th, 2024, Boulder, Colorado. At the small community memorial garden beneath a flowering dogwood tree, Lillian Doyle stood beside Erin holding a bronze plaque in her hands. Erin stepped forward, unscrewed the old placeholder nameplate, and fixed the new one in place. It read, "In memory of Megan Doyle, 1971 to 1993. She sang louder than the silence. A breeze stirred the trees. Lillian reached into her purse and pulled out an old, worn cassette, the original, the one Megan had left behind. She placed it in the dirt beneath the plaque and whispered, "She's free now." Erin stood beside her, the sun warm on her shoulders, the forest behind them quiet at last. The pattern was broken, and the girl who sang in the dark would never be forgotten.